If anyone here spent much time at the Trentham Army Camp, just up the road here? So some of you people have been there. Some of you might work there. I first went at the Army camp must have been about 8 years ago. My son, he was playing rugby. He still plays rugby, but back then he was playing for Upper Hutt Rams juniors, and his coach worked there. And one day it was raining, and so what they did was they said, hey, we're going to run training in the gym that we've got here. They had a big indoor facility. It'll be a perfect place for the crew to run around and to do some training. But hey, if you're going to come on site, what you need to do, you'll need to show a driver's license, and there's some sort of protocol around that and what you had to do. And I'd never been on site before. I'd driven past heaps of times, but never been on. And so the first time I pull up at the gate, and you get there, and it's a little bit intimidating, because you got like the army dudes there, and they ask for your ID, and they tick you off a sheet, and it all looks a bit scary. And my personality is I'm always looking for something fun to do. Like, what can I do here that's like a little bit naughty, but not real naughty? Like, I'm not a big fan of rules. In fact, I once did those profile things where you go online and you answer all these questions and it gives you like a personality profile about yourself. I can't remember, disc one, I think this one was. It was one of those things. And then this was like my favorite line, and it summed me up so well. It said, Clint really believes in the importance of rules. He just doesn't think they apply to him. Which, like, if you want a bit of an insight into my personality, that's so me. I really don't think they apply to me. And so I'm thinking, well, what's something that I could do here that would be fun and memorable and be a cool story? And then I chickened out. Do you know why? Because they've got guns and stuff. And you can get away with silly things in certain places. But in a place like the army camp might not be the best place to test boundaries. And then I remember we drove in and got Tyler in the front seat, and you're driving, to find where to go. And like, it just felt so out of place because, like, it's just, I know nothing about the army. I've never been trained. I've never done anything. This, like, feels so foreign to me. I didn't want to, like, make eye contact with people. I'd look around because I'm nosy, but when people looked at me, I'd be like, and like hiding in my seat, like, just trying to get to where he was going. And we figured out where it was and dropped him off and actually organised for another parent to drop him home, which was awesome. So I got to take off. But I had this experience of going through the camp, just feeling a little bit intimidated, feeling a little bit like, oh, this isn't quite right. And fast forward the clock a little bit. A few years later, a guy I knew was finishing up at the army, and Mike Parry, one of the elders from church that many of you might know, Mike was going along, and he goes, oh, Clint, why don't you come along to this function? I'm like, oh, okay, I'll come along to this function. And so I go to the army base with Mike, and so Mike's been defence forever. He's got the credentials, he's got the mana, he's got the respect, he belongs. And this time, I pull up in the car, and Mike's driving, and I'm in the passenger seat, and Mike goes through the protocol. And then we go in, and Mike's showing me around, and he's taking me, there's this thing, and this is what that's for, and that's what that's for. And then, hey, that's like the function room for people at this level, but hey, because we're at this level, we're going to go over to this function room. And when I was getting taken around the army base with Mike, my body language and the way I walked was quite different because I had Mike with me. See, I didn't now feel like I was intruding into someone else's space and someone else's place. I felt, actually, I have a right to be here, not because of what I've done or what I've achieved, but because who's standing with me. So this time I walked around like I owned the place. My shoulders were a little bit higher, my chest was out a little bit more. I was like, yeah, I belong here because of who I was with. And today, as we wrap up this little Christmas series, Emmanuel, I want to just push forward a question because I think when we understand who's with us all the time, it can change the way we walk and it can change the way we live. See, what Emmanuel means is God with us. And as we go through this life, I am convinced that when you and I are certain that God is with us, we don't just know it intellectually in our head, but we have a conviction in our heart that He is with us. We walk a little different. We talk a little different. We have a slightly better posture. We have a little bit more courage because of who we're walking with and who's alongside us. See, this is what Matthew recorded for us. He says, all of this occurred to fulfill the Lord's message through his prophet. Look, the virgin will conceive a child. She will give birth to a son. They will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. And what's cool about this, what Matthew's doing, there's 4 accounts of Jesus' life in the Bible, okay? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, who wrote this account, he was a Jewish person. His name was Levi. He knew the Jewish scriptures very, very well. And then the reason we know that is because when you read through Matthew's account, what he does is he takes a lot of the Old Testament scriptures, especially some of the prophecies, and ties them into his account. And his account was very much written to a Jewish audience, and he was writing it in such a way that the Jewish people reading it would see that this Messiah, that Jesus was the Messiah, that they've been waiting for, the Messiah that they had been expecting. And so what he's doing here in this little passage is he's taking a quote from the prophet Isaiah, as found in Isaiah 7 verse 14, and then he's quoting it to say, hey, this is all taking place, and look, this is what Isaiah said. This has been in our written records for hundreds of years. And what's crazy about this was the book Isaiah was written, they estimate, in 700 BC. And if you actually look through some of the things that Isaiah says, it's absolutely incredible how it foretells the story of Jesus. And in fact, some people today that have never researched this, that have never really looked into it, that don't understand how the Bible was put together, they just go, of course it all matches up, because someone just at one stage wrote this whole thing, so they got that part up to line up with that part, and it's easy, right? Like, anyone could do that. But what history and historians can prove was that this letter from Isaiah was written 700 years before Jesus walked on the planet. It wasn't changed, it wasn't adjusted. This was out there, and it was so well known that no one can actually go back and refute it and say that actually was written after Jesus. And in fact, there was a man called Jerome. He's often known as Saint Jerome. He lived in, I think, the 4th century after Christ. He was responsible for translating the Old Testament into Latin so that people could read it. He said in his preface to Isaiah, he said that Isaiah was more of an evangelist than a prophet, because he described all of the mysteries of the Church of Christ so vividly that you would assume he was prophesying about the future. But he was not prophesying about the future, but rather was composing a history of past events. That's how detailed this is. It's absolutely remarkable. It's incredible the way that Matthew can take what was written there and bring it back to make his case. And what I want to focus in on is just that very last part. We will call him Emmanuel, because the series has been called Emmanuel, which means God with us. And if you're here today and you're new to church, you're new to the whole Christian thing, you're trying to figure out what faith is all about, can I just talk real directly, real specifically to you for a moment? Because what a lot of people think when they haven't heard much about Christianity, or they don't really know what Christianity is all about, that they kind of have this idea, this perception that God's this God that sort of sits up there, if there's a God, that doesn't really involve himself with human affairs. He's sort of just sitting up there waiting, letting people do their thing, sort of just observing. Some people even think not only is he observing, but he's waiting for someone to do something wrong and be like, Bella, I knew she was going to do that. Put a cross next to her. And JP, nah, put a cross. Lorraine, nah, I saw that. Well, you thought no one was looking. I saw that. And put a cross by people's name. But what the scriptures teach us, what the Christian faith teaches us, is that we haven't got a God who's far and distant, but we've got a God who's present. We haven't got a God who's far removed, but we've got a God who cares about just every aspect of our life. That what Christians have done is we've often created this disconnect between what's sacred and what's secular. We say, hey, coming to church, that's sacred. Reading your Bible, that's sacred. Maybe times in prayer, that's sacred. But everything else is secular. And I'm going to involve God in this part, but the rest of it's just about living life. What the Christian faith teaches us is that there's no difference between what's sacred and what's secular. That God is just as present and God cares just as much about what we're doing when we're doing anything as He does when we're doing the traditional church type activities. And in fact, what it teaches us is that God is just as present with you on Tuesday afternoon when you're teaching in your classroom and it's 2:55 and you're just waiting for that 3 o'clock bell to go. God's just as present there as He is right now. That God's just as present when you're giving that sales pitch at 9:43 on a Monday morning trying to win that big account as what He is at 6:43 in the morning when you might be reading your scriptures. That God is just as present with you when you're sitting down doing your exam at 11:27 on Thursday as what He was when you were praying the night before. God, help me in my exam because I know I haven't done enough study. That there's no difference between what's sacred and what's secular. We really do believe that there's a God who is present in everything. And what I want to talk about today is this. How would you live? How would I live if we were certain that God was with us? How would you live if you were certain that God was with you? When you're brushing your teeth, when you're eating your lunch, when you're doing your work, when you're preparing dinner, when you're washing your clothes, when you're writing that report, when you're having that meeting, when you're having banter in the lunchroom, how would we live if we were certain that God was with us? You see, because I think for those of us that have been around church for a while, we've got a bit of a head knowledge idea of this, right? Yeah, God's with me. Yeah, God's with me. But I think for a lot of us, we lack that inner conviction that God is with me. That the knowledge is in here, but it's never got to here. And what I'm praying that today, and or maybe as you reflect on this or as you think on this over the coming days, that God will do that powerful shift where He moves that knowledge from here to here, and it'll be this conviction that you've got that, man, God truly is with me. Because I genuinely believe, if we can live with a conviction that He is with us, it changes everything. It changes the way we walk, it changes the way we talk, it changes our countenance, it changes the way that we see situations, it helps us not react to what's going on in front of us, it helps us to respond to it. In fact, when I was thinking about this, I wrote this down yesterday, and it just simply said this. The Christmas accounts are not just a story of an historical event. They are an account of a historical event, but it's more than that. It is a profound demonstration of God's intention and His initiative to be with His people. So how would you live? How would you live if you were certain? If you just had this deep level of trust, this core conviction of a certainty that God is with me at all times in all that I do. See, in the Christmas account, we hear the account of in particular of Mary and Joseph. And we can just pick on them for a moment because we can see how they lived knowing that God was with them. And let's just start with Joseph, right? Joseph's in this interesting situation. Joseph is betrothed. He's kind of engaged. He's going to get married to Mary. Everything's looking good. Everything's looking great. It's really, really exciting. But one day Mary comes to Joseph and has to have an interesting conversation with him. One day Mary comes to Joseph, and when Mary gets to Joseph, she says, "Hey, Joe," probably crying, right? "There's something I've got to tell you." And Joe's like, "You got me present?" Like, he could probably tell by her body language that's not the right question. So he probably didn't actually say that. That was me being silly. "Joe, I've got to tell you something." "Okay, Mary, what's going on? I'm sure everything's going to be all right." Well, Joe, And she probably would have thought about this for quite a long time. Like, what approach do I take? Well, Joe, I saw an angel. What's Joe thinking? Do you need to see a psychiatrist? Do we need to give you some pills? Like, is everything all right in your head? Like, am I sure I want to marry you? Like, are things changing? No, Joe, understand, I really did see an angel. And Joe's probably like, I don't know. This is Clint's interpretation of this conversation. Okay, you won't find this written in Luke or in Matthew. But I wonder if Joe's like, something's going on. How cares for her? Help me understand. You saw an angel. Well, let's hear me for a bit. What did the angel say? Well, Joe, this is going to be harder to tell you. But the angel told me, I'm pregnant. What? The angel told me I'm pregnant. You can't be pregnant, Barry. We're not married yet. Things. No, Joe. You're not the dad. But don't worry. I haven't been cheating on you. God is the dad. At that point, right, Joe must be thinking, what the heck have I got myself into? Quick pause break. Thank you, God, we're not married. Thank you. Do you know what I'm saying? Well, that's what I'll be thinking, right? You know, if someone came to me and said, hey, Mindy came to me before we got married, Clint, I'm pregnant, and you're not the dad. Oh, good luck. Hope the dad's a nice guy. Enjoy your life, right? And what we are told is that Joseph made plans that he was going to tell Mary that the engagement's off. We're done. But then an angel appears to Joseph and confirms everything that's taken place. Right? So Joseph knows what's going on. He knows it's true. He knows God is with them. But still think how hard that situation would be for Joseph. Like, imagine when Joseph's out shooting some hoops with his mates, or they're back in a place and then they're playing a little bit of poker, or they're just chilling out with his friends. And the guys are like, Joe, is something going on with Mary? Like, she's looking a bit round these days. Yeah, guys, guess what? She's pregnant. Oh, Joe, you never told us that was going on. Oh, no, I'm not the dad. Well, what do you mean, Joe? Oh, no, I'm not the dad. But I saw an angel. And the angel told me that actually the baby is God's baby. Well, what would his friends be saying to him? Joe, has this skill got you wrapped around your little finger or what? Like, you are believing this? What's going on? But what we see with Joe, that even in the middle of the situation where things would have been so difficult for him, when no one really would have believed, like honestly, if someone came to you and said, hey, an angel came and visited me last night and told me I was having a baby, I don't think any of you would believe them because you're not stupid, right? And it's not a normal thing. And so life would have been really difficult for Joseph, but what do we see from Joseph? He acted with integrity, even in the midst of this crazy, crazy situation. He continued to honor and look after Mary. And if we think of Mary in the situation too, like here she is in an incredibly vulnerable situation. Like, just imagine, teenage girl. Some of you have been teenage girls. Some of you are teenage girls. Imagine you being pregnant, and the only explanation you can give is, yeah, an angel told me this, and this. Like, it'd be pretty reassuring that the angels come and told you that, and you'd feel secure in that. But you'd still feel pretty vulnerable around your friends and around your family. And like, I don't know, but I'd imagine if I was a teenager, I'd just be saying, angel, can you please turn up to my mum's house? Can you please turn up to my dad? Because I don't know how they're going to react to this. And if you don't tell them, there's no way they're going to believe me. Right? She's in a very, very vulnerable place. But what do we see her do straight away? She goes and she writes and she sings a song of praise about how good God is, even though she's about to go into some crazy, difficult times. And then think of it like this. It's scary enough giving birth and looking after like a normal child. Like, I don't know, I've got 6 kids, and the first one was a bit of an experiment because I did so much damage to her. I'm amazed how well she's turned out. I remember taking her to Avalon Park, and they used to have this silver slide. They don't have it anymore. Maybe they had CCTV footage, and after me, they said, this is not good. I put her at the top of it, and I slid her down the slide. I'm not a total idiot, okay? I put her feet first. This will be safe. I said, do you want to go sitting up? She goes, no, I'll lie down the other way. Okay. So I put her down. I'm at the top of the slide. Nothing you can do. She goes down the slide. She's going quite fast. I'm like, oh, she's going quite fast. She goes off the end and then face plants right onto the corner lip, boom, as she falls off. Bleeding face, bleeding mouth. Oh, this is not good parenting, Clint. Better go and get her. And then another time we had a jolly jumper at home. This is how I get out of babysitting. I just tell these stories, eh? We had a jolly jumper at home, and you hang it above the door and the kids jump in it. And this was like an old school one. I think it was, I got it from my mum who had it from when I was little. And I put her in that, and you had these two, but it had like these 3 buttons that were like, you had to push them quite hard to clip in, And so I put her in that, she was jumping, and then I wanted to get her out. And so I got down and I undid one side. I think, oh yeah, she'll be right, while I reach around the other side. Well, no, she wasn't all right. She flipped the whole thing straight over the way that I'd undone and smacked her head on the ground. She's doing pretty well for a kid that's had a few head knocks. And it was just a little bit scary. And any of you guys know, we've got a newborn baby. They're pretty fragile, eh? And imagine, not only having this responsibility of a baby, but imagine, if that baby was the Son of God, who's come to save the sins of the entire world. I can't mess this one up, can I? Better not throw him down the slide. Better not put him in the jolly jumper. Imagine, you see people that are pregnant today, and they get told, hey, when you're pregnant, there's this list of what you can't do. It covers pretty much everything in the world. When we had Ali, it was don't drink alcohol. Maybe don't eat shellfish. Everything else was kind of all right. I think. I'm probably wrong, but my Mary, you forget some of these things, right? But today, it's you can't do this, you can't do that. You can go to the whole supermarket, but you can shop in that little aisle there because everything else is off guard. Imagine how tense you'd be. And you know what people are like. This is Mary's first child. You know what people are like when they're pregnant with their first child. Everything's about the baby, and I better not do that. I better not knock my stomach. I better not do that. No, it's going to be dangerous. I better not do that. Imagine if that was the Son of God that you had in there. Man, that'd be way more scary. That's what Mary had coming up. And yet, with everything that could have come at her, she was in a place where she's like, man, I can sing a song of praise because she was certain that God was with her. How would your life be different if you were certain? If you knew that God was with you? Would you walk into that classroom with a little bit more confidence if you knew God was with you? Would you walk into that new workplace environment with your shoulders a little bit higher and a bit more spring in your step if you kind of knew God was with you? Would you look at those different environments that you find yourself in with a better perspective as to truly how important they were if you knew God was with you? Would you behave a little differently when you're around your friends and you're around your family if you knew God was with you? Would you really say those words if you knew God was with you? Would you live with a greater level of integrity if you knew God was with you? See, I once heard that the best definition, or what I think is the best definition of integrity, or the best test of integrity, is what you do when no one's looking. How you act, what you do when there's no one watching, when no one can see what you're doing, and you've got this sense of like, no one's ever going to find out what I'm doing. How do I act in that situation? Well, wouldn't that situation be super easy if you just had this conviction like, God's with me. He's going to see exactly what goes on. See, I think we'd be a whole lot more kind. I think we'd be a whole lot more compassionate. I think we'd be a whole lot more thoughtful. I think we'd be a whole lot just nicer if we always knew and we always acted with this conviction that, hey, God is with me. I think we'd try and become the person that God really wants us to be if we know that He's always with me. So some people, we go through life and we can feel really lonely. And we can feel like, I'm alone. Imagine how that changes if you realize the Creator of the heavens and the earth is with me. I might be lonely and no one really knows me. But the Creator of the heavens and the earth, who spoke this into being, He's with me. I'm not alone. I can't get away from him. I can't go climbing up that mountain. And He's still with me. I can dive to the depths of the ocean. And He's still with me. I can lock myself in my room and not come out, but He is still with me. What about handling rejection? We've all found that we've had to deal with rejection in some way, shape, or form. Some of us, it's a big thing, right? But don't you react a little bit differently when you realize he could reject me, she could reject me, they could reject me? But the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, He's still with me. They know just this sliver, this fraction about me, and they've rejected me. But the one who knows everything about me, who knows not only the words that I say and all my actions, but all of my thoughts, He still accepts me. Don't you think I could handle that rejection just a little better if I know that He is with me? What's another thing a lot of us, we all experience and can be a big thing for a lot of us? Failure. Would we reposition how we see that failure? If we know that even in that failure, He is still with me. That failure might have been they don't like me, and it might have been they looked down on me, and it might have been that they walked away from me, and it might have been that I've even bent myself up so much because of what I've done. But in the midst of that, the one who can calm the storms, the one who can heal the sick, the one who can give sight to the blind, is still with me. But if we feel unloved or unvalued, let's remind ourselves, I might feel unloved, I might feel unvalued, but man, the one who created me refuses to give up on me, and He is still with me. So I'm still valued. I'm still loved. See, I think one of the biggest mistakes we have, I believe, and in the world in which we live today is we live so much by our feelings. That don't get me wrong, I'm all about it and I'm all for that. There's a time you've got to talk out your feelings and you've got to process stuff, and if you don't do that, you're going to end up messed up. And Anna can talk to you about all that stuff way better than I can. And I believe in that, and I think it's good. But I also think we live in a culture that just pushes feelings way too high. Because sometimes the feelings don't line up with the facts. And what's more important, a feeling or a fact? I'll put it to you that a fact is way more important than a feeling. I might feel that I'm the smartest person in my science class. How did you get on your test, Clint? 46%. You're clearly not the smartest person in the class. In fact, of everyone in the class, you're the only one who got less than 50%. For you youngins, that's a NA, not achieved, okay? You guys don't do numbers anymore. Maybe because you're not smart enough. That's why we'll leave it. No. But I feel like I'm the smartest in the class. Clint, we don't care how you feel. Your test results are not very good. You are not the smartest person in the class. Your feelings don't line up with the facts. What's right? Not your feelings, the facts. So some of you are like, I just feel ugly. You don't feel it? No, I'm joking. I'm joking. You're not ugly because you feel ugly. You're ugly if you are ugly. But do you know what I mean? I feel ugly. It doesn't change the way that you look. I feel funny. No one's laughing. I feel like I'm good at my job. Boss doesn't think so. Feelings don't matter so much. It's facts. I feel like I should be paid $500,000 a year. Okay. Go work somewhere else. Do you know what I mean? But this is often what we do when it comes to God. I don't feel like God's here. So he can't be. I don't feel like God's present. So he's not. No. The fact is, he promised that he is present. He promised that he is with you. So it doesn't matter how we feel, because the fact is, he is there. One of the things that irritates me, and especially doing what I do, is people come and go, I didn't feel God was there today. It's like, who are you to comment on whether God was there or not? It's nice to know that you felt that way, but I don't really care so much about how you feel. I care about what the facts are, and the facts are that he is always present. Do you know what I mean? Yes, there are some times where we do really feel like God's there, and it's really special and it's incredible, and then those things, like, we do what we do because hopefully people do feel that. Sometimes we want that. But actually, God's presence isn't determined by how I feel or how you feel or how they feel. Because one person can feel this, one person can feel the exact opposite. They're in the same row, in the same place. No, it's not about how we feel. It's his promise. And sometimes the reason why we don't feel certain that God is with us because we don't feel what we think we should feel, or we're not exhibiting the certain things we think people would exhibit. But it's not about how we feel. We can have a certainty that he is with us, not because we deserve his presence, not because we can make it happen, but because of his character and his goodness and his promise that he is with us. That he is with us. There's an incredible account, and I forgot the name, but this person wrote a book, and he called it Practicing the Presence of God. And what he decided to do to help move the shift from secular and spiritual, he went and got a job as a dishwasher. And he said, well, what's a job I can do that I just feel like God would never? And so he goes, I'm washing dishes. And so if any of your dishwashers, this is what he chose, not me, so don't blame me. And he says, but I wanted to cultivate the sense of that remind myself that God is with me. And so as he was washing his dishes, he just continued to remind himself that God is with me, God is with me, God is with me. And through it, incredible things happened, even though he was washing dishes. Most of us, if we were washing dishes, would feel like, get me out of here, why have you abandoned me, God? But he knew that God's presence wasn't based on how he felt, but was based on what God had promised. That's why God is just as present in your life every other hour of the week as much as he is when you're right here. So let me just give you a couple of thoughts on this, right? Just a couple of practices that might help. Because I just want to inspire and say, like, man, wouldn't it be cool to go through life knowing God's with us? No, let's just go. And we just go back to our normal everyday life. But what I need to help me do this, to remind myself, is I need triggers. Something that just helps me realize, that's right, God's with me. Because I find it so easy, like I'm sure a lot of you do, to maybe start my day, have a cool prayer time, read the Bible, do stuff like this. And then it's like, cool, now I've got all the stuff I've got to get done. I've got these concerns, I've got these responsibilities at work, I've got these responsibilities at home, these other things I'm part of, and I've got to get all this done, I've got to move it all forward. And it's really easy for me to go from like, into my day, get to the end of the day and just go, oh yeah, did I really go through the day aware that God was with me? And what I've done in the past, one time I went out and I brought an old school watch. It took me ages to find this. But one that every hour would just go, beep, beep. Does anyone remember those watches when, like, we were kids? Beep, beep. I went and brought one of those so that every hour it would go, beep, just to remind myself that there was like a focus point. Okay, that God is with me. This was before we had cell phones. Now it's even easier, right? You can just put a thing on your phone. So just as a reminder, hey, God is with me. And the power of that one in particular is this. Even when you turn that buzzer off after a few weeks, or when you feel like I'm starting to understand this more, your phone's going to continue to buzz naturally. So it's a really good reminder for a really, really long time. So I just encourage you to find a trigger. It might be, hey, there's a certain place that I go, I'm going to put a sticker in a certain place on my steering wheel, on the bathroom mirror. I'm going to put one on my fridge. I'm going to put one on my laptop. I'm going to put one in things that I pick up all the time, on the back of my phone case that I put down that way. So every time I see that, it just becomes a trigger for me to remind me that God is with me. Because I know your tendency is probably the same as mine. That it's really, really hard just to remind yourself of this naturally. So putting those little triggers in place can make such a difference. And there's something so special about us going through life with a certainty that God is with us. Because look, I don't know what you've been through in life. I don't know your highs. I don't know your lows. I don't know what's going on in your world right now. I don't know what's going to happen this afternoon, let alone tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, over the next decade, or even further afield. I've got no idea what's going to come your way. I've got no idea what some of those big, massive, exciting peaks are going to be, or what some of those difficult, dark valleys are going to entail. But what I know is this. If you go to those peaks, certain that God is with you, they're going to be better. If you go through those valleys, knowing that God is with you, they're going to be better. If you walk through the mundane, the everyday, the normality of life, knowing that God is with you, He will take what is normal, what is mundane, what is everyday, and He will make it sacred. Because you have a certainty that He is with you. And you have a confidence and a hope. You see, well, what's cool about this passage that I showed you? If we go to that slide, if we bring that back up, the first 4 words tell us so much. All of this occurred. All of this occurred. Talking about the birth of Jesus. All of this occurred. All of the orchestration of all of these events that took place. One prophecy was that the virgin will conceive and she will give birth to a child. There were heaps of prophecies that Jesus' birth fulfilled. For instance, we were told that one prophecy said that the Son of God would come through the line of David. We can see two accounts of ancestry in the Gospels. One goes through Mary's line. One goes through Joseph's line. Both of them tie back to David and show the line that the Messiah was meant to come through. We were told that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. Bethlehem's over there. Jesus, he was born. He wasn't born. His parents, Mary and Joseph, lived in Nazareth. And someone, somewhere, had this idea that on this particular time, on this particular day, there'd be a census, and then that everyone would have to return to their hometown, their ancestral town, on this day, at this time, so that Mary and Joseph would be in Bethlehem when Jesus was born to fulfill that prophecy. God pulled all of this together. He orchestrated all of this because He cares about the details, and He's in the details, and He is right there. And if we go through all of our life, all of our situations with this conviction that God is with me, and we know at that same time that He is in control. We just know that He can orchestrate things together in ways we can't foresee, in ways we can't understand or comprehend, and maybe only when we get to heaven one day and God can explain it to us, we'll just be like, wow, that is what you were doing. But it comes back to you and I living our life certain of the fact He is with you. Because it's easy to walk through life the way that I first walked into that army camp. A little bit intimidated, a little bit scared, a little bit to be driven by my feelings. Do I feel hopeful today? Yes, because things are going my way. No, because they're not. But I'll tell you what, when you can walk through life with that certainty that God is with you, your shoulders stand a little bit taller. Your posture's got a little bit more to it. There's an extra spring in your step. Because you know that whatever you're walking through, whatever you're walking from, whatever you're walking to, God is going to be there in the midst of it. And He is the one that can orchestrate everything. So let me pray here. Yeah, Heavenly Father, the reality is we're all busy, our minds so occupied with so many things, and it's so easy for us and in this achievement-focused, accomplishment-focused world to next thing, to spend all of our time and all of our minutes focused on what needs to be done. And yet, what we are promised is your presence. And I pray, Father, you'll help all of us to cultivate a lifestyle where we can be aware of your presence with us when we feel it and when we don't. That we'll just know to the core of who we are that you are with us. And we will conduct all of our relationships with that in mind. We'll conduct all of our business affairs or our studies with that in mind. We'll parent with that in mind. We'll love those around us with that in mind. So I just pray, Lord, you can shift this from being a head knowledge for a lot of us to a heart knowledge that you are with us. Amen.